Happening right now, the IRS Commissioner John Koskinen getting grilled by Republican senators over what steps are being taken to make sure no individual or group is singled out again after the DOJ said they would not pursue charges against Lois Lerner. Here is the Commissioner Koskinen just a moment ago on changes made so far.
We've discovered that it was a mistake that shouldn't have happened, and it obviously did not help our response to the investigation. What we need to do is when we have a document protection and retention request, what we learned is you can't rely on sending it out from the top in a large organization, 85,000 employees, and assume that it will automatically be transmitted accurately through the bottom.
Well, so that was a moment ago. Now South Dakota Senator John Thune's on that committee. He's chairman of the Senate Republican Conference as well, and you just stepped out of the hearing. What did you learn? I mean, after the Department of Justice says we will not pursue charges here, what can you do?
Well, that was very disappointing, Bill. I guess it shouldn't come as any big surprise. This is the Obama Justice Department. But I think more importantly here, what they're getting at, what the commissioner is going to say and is saying, is that this is a management issue and we're going to make fixes. And it's more than that. It's not just bad management or poor judgment. This is a cultural issue within the IRS where they have people who believe that they are all powerful and that they have this power over the American people. And we believe what has to happen here is a complete culture change there. And it starts with putting in place a taxpayer bill of rights. Senator Grassley and I have introduced legislation that would require the IRS to treat taxpayers with the respect that they deserve and to provide the service that they expect from the agency that collects their taxes.
Well, you know Catherine Engelbrecht? She testified on Capitol Hill, and she believes she was one of the groups that was targeted. She was on our program yesterday. She sounded defenseless. Almost like, hey, what can we do now? She said the government polices itself, and the only way you can fight back is by winning an election a year from November. What do you think about that reaction from an everyday American?
I think, unfortunately, that's the way a lot of hardworking taxpayers in this country feel about that agency. And if you look at her and other tax-exempt organizations, it was 600 years with the number of years that they were delayed in terms of their application for that status. And because of the targeting that was going on at the IRS. And that's what's got to change, Bill. There has to be a cultural change. You know, the ranking member on the Senate Finance Committee described this as a vast bureaucratic dysfunction. They're saying that there was incompetence. All true. But that's not enough. This agency has to go through a cultural change, and we believe that the best way to do that is to put in place a taxpayer bill of rights that will provide the protections that taxpayers need so that they know they're not going to have an agency that has that kind of power, the power literally to destroy their lives, running amok and doing the types of things that this agency was responsible for the past several years.
What Koskinen is saying is that it's not corruption, it was just incompetence.
Correct. I mean, he's saying it's bad judgment, poor judgment, incompetence, dysfunction. I mean, they've got all ways of describing this, all of which miss the fundamental point is, and that this is an agency that needs a top-down change in the culture. This agency has to reform. It's got to be changed, and we intend to get at that.
So you disagree with the Department of Justice in its decision not to prosecute Lerner? I mean, that's what you're saying. So do you have the evidence that says, hey, you guys dropped the ball? This should have been prosecuted. Charges should have been presented.
Well, a couple things, Bill. One is, again, this is an Obama Justice Department that's failed to prosecute in the past, whether it's fast and furious, whether it's the wait times at the VA. But secondly, it's hard, to prove intent when, mysteriously, Lois Lerner's emails all disappear. And that obviously is an important part of being able to prosecute that case. But yes, obviously I disagree with that. I think there was terrible things that happened at the IRS that they need to be held responsible for. And just coming up here and saying that it was incompetence and bad judgment, it doesn't solve that problem for the American taxpayers who were harmed by the actions of people at the IRS.
One last question. Taxpayer Bill of Rights. Do you have Democratic support on that idea or not?
Well, not at the moment, but we're hoping to build that. We think this is something that ought to be bipartisan. This is an agency that is desperately in need of reform. The only way to get at that is to put those types of taxpayer protections in place. The Taxpayer Bill of Rights does that. We need to get on with moving it and changing the culture top down.
Oh, we lost that. Do we have it? One last comment before we get to the period at the end of the sentence. We got it. Senator, finish up.
All right, well, thanks, Bill. I just think that the Taxpayer Bill of Rights is something that has to move. We need top-down reform at the IRS, and the American people deserve to be protected from bad behavior by the agency that collects their taxes and has that kind of power over their lives.
10-4. Thank you, sir. John Thune, the Republican from South Dakota.
Bill.
Thanks for stepping out of the hearing and joining us for this segment now. Thank you, Martha.